It's the single greatest fear for any parent. You entrust your child to someone, believing they'll be safe, cared for, and returned to your arms at the end of the day. This daily trust is like a bridge built on faith, and that you send your child across each morning. But for one family in Little Rock, Arkansas, that bridge collapsed catastrophically, ending in a homicide investigation. The home they thought was a safe haven for their infant son was actually a place of simmering frustration, ready to erupt into fatal violence. Before this address became a crime scene, the Flower Day family believed it was a place of trust. And before he became a victim, 8-month-old Elijah Flowerday was a beloved son whose life was just beginning. The 911 call came on the morning of December 30th, 2025, from a quiet suburban home on Clifton Drive in Little Rock. The caller reported a medical emergency, an unresponsive infant. First responders arrived at 11:14 a.m. and found an 8-month-old boy who wasn't breathing. They immediately started CPR, racing against the clock as the ambulance sped away towards Arkansas Children's Hospital, but it was too late. Shortly after they arrived, the infant was pronounced dead. An initial exam revealed injuries that were clearly not accidental. Doctors found a catastrophic skull fracture and massive brain bleeding. The damage was a clear signature written in violence, leaving no doubt this wasn't a medical emergency. It was a homicide. For Elijah Flowerday's parents, the morning had started like any other. They dropped off their happy, healthy 8-month-old at the home of 23-year-old Aaron Sauls, a woman who ran an informal daycare out of her house. To them and to others, she seemed reliable. With good references and a home that appeared safe, she cared for a small group of children on Clifton Drive. Another parent, Haley Wilkerson, who also dropped off her 2 young kids at her house that morning with no idea of the tragedy about to unfold. John Rand, a grandfather, had his grandson in her care as well, believing he was in a secure place. But inside the walls of 33 Clifton Drive, a different reality was taking shape. According to a police arrest report, the horror began during a mundane moment: a diaper change. Aaron Sauls would later confess to investigators exactly what happened in that room. She told them she was frustrated and had a headache. Her anger in that moment was like a lightning strike, a sudden violent burst of rage. She took 8-month-old Elijah and struck his head against the hardwood floor, not once, but 3 times. After the assault, she told police that Elijah became hot and sweaty. She gave him a bottle, hoping he would calm down, and then put him to bed. About 15 minutes later, she went to check on him and discovered he was no longer breathing. Only then was the call to 911 finally made. At Arkansas Children's Hospital, the medical staff knew right away they were dealing with something horrific. Scans showed Elijah had a fractured skull and severe bleeding in his brain and eyes. A doctor told police the injuries were consistent with immense deliberate force and had to have occurred after 7 a.m. that morning. After he was dropped off at the daycare, his mother confirmed he was perfectly fine when she left him in her care. With the medical evidence pointing straight to homicide, detectives from the Little Rock Police Department headed to the house on Clifton Drive. The investigation didn't take long. Faced with undeniable proof of Elijah's injuries, Aaron Saul's story collapsed like a house of cards. During a police interview, she admitted everything. She recounted how her frustration and a headache led her to slam the infant's head against the floor. Her confession was chillingly straightforward, a stark explanation for the death of a defenseless child. The murder weapon wasn't a weapon at all. It was the hardwood floor of the very room where Elijah should have been safest. The other children, including Haley Wilkinson's 2-year-old son, were in the house when it happened. What they might have seen or heard is a question that haunts their parents. Wilkinson later revealed a disturbing text message she received from Sauls. While Elijah was dying, in it, Sauls fabricated a story, claiming Elijah had developed a cough and was having a medical issue. The message was a futile attempt to paper cover any atrocity, mentioning her plan to keep the daycare open, a chilling sign of her attempt to cover up the severity of what she had done. Erin Sauls was arrested on December 30th of 2025 and charged with capital murder, as she should have been. She appeared in Little Rock District Court the next day, on New Year's Eve, and entered a plea of not guilty. The judge denied her request for bail, ordering her to remain at the Pulaski County Detention Facility. Her next court appearance was scheduled for January 13th of 2026, with another set for February 27th of 2026. For the families who had put their trust in Erin Sauls, the news hit like a shockwave. John Rand, whose grandson was at the daycare that day, told reporters of his shock. Not telling what he witnessed, he said, the thought of what could have happened to his own grandchild was a sickening realization shared by other parents. One anonymous parent told the media, "It makes me nauseous to think about." Of course, the deepest impact was on Elijah's family. His parents, Isaac and Trinity, and his older brother, Leyland, were left to face an unimaginable grief. A GoFundMe was started to help them with unexpected funeral costs, giving them time to mourn together. The page reads, "This tragedy has left Isaac, Trinity, and their son Leyland heartbroken as they grieve the loss of their son and little brother. The days ahead will be incredibly difficult as they try to find comfort and healing together as a family." For Haley Wilkinson, the trauma was doubled. She was not only grieving the death of a child she knew, but also watching the psychological fallout in her own son. She reported that her 2-year-old son, who was there that day, started showing major behavioral changes. He became fearful of being touched and withdrawn from others, heart-wrenching signs of the trauma he'd been through. Wilkinson vowed she would never use an in-home daycare again. Other parents who had used her services began to come forward. For them, past events suddenly clicked into place like puzzle pieces, forming a terrifying picture they never knew existed. A mother named Ala Fulton had already pulled her 2 sons from the daycare, citing frequent cancellations, and a gut feeling that something was off. Carl and Megan Minnick recalled that their son Axel often came home with strange marks or scratches. He had also suffered a severe illness that required hospitalization, which doctors at the time couldn't explain. While no direct link was ever proven, Minnick's now planned to speak with detectives. The death of Elijah Flowerday is a story about a moment of inexcusable violence, but it's also a painful reminder of just how fragile trust can be. Erin Sauls was operating her daycare outside the state's formal licensing and inspection system. This lack of oversight is like a safety net full of holes, creating a space where warning signs can be missed and a personal crisis can turn deadly. This case highlights the vulnerability of both children and parents in a system where unregulated child care is sometimes the only option. For parents like Haley Wilkerson, John Rand, and the Minnix, the faith they placed in one person was violated in the most catastrophic way imaginable, leaving behind a trail of trauma and grief. For Elijah's family, the loss is absolute. A life full of promise extinguished by an act of violence that was as brief as it was devastating. A headache? A diaper change? It's a horrible lesson in how a single spark of frustration can ignite a fire that destroys everything. The case against Erin Sauls is now moving through the legal system. If this story brings up any thoughts for you, please share them respectfully in the comments below. For more deep dives into complex cases, please consider subscribing. Thank you for listening, and may we never forget the story of Elijah Flowerday.